Chapter 12. The Order of the Pathfinders. My name is Aranoe. I represent the Vengralian Trium. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Commander Esperanta. Captain, Ino corrected the alien seated across from her, and I think it was Harbor Master Zane who invited you into the room. The Savanti bureaucrat waved her hand nonchalantly. These are extraordinary circumstances, said Zane. Ino felt a rustle behind her and looked around. She was seated in the Harbor Master's office at Quantum Crossing Space Dock, and the room was chock full of people. Harbor Master Zane and her secretary took 2 seats behind the desk. Ino was sitting across the room, while Elodie stood behind her, flanked on each side by Space Marines. Finally, 3 picklings were crammed into the room. The aquatic creatures looked very out of place, their bodies sleek with a thin layer of mucus. Ino wondered just how uncomfortable the picklings were in the environment of Quantum Crossing, which was measurably less arid than pickling starships. Extraordinary indeed, replied Aranoe. Deep scans show that the cosmic storm threatening us now is only going to grow larger and more destructive. It is only a matter of weeks until the ionizing radiation is so severe that the outer hull of this habitat will be unable to protect those inside. That's why you've decided to evacuate, Ino said to Zane. The Harbor Master nodded. The nearest Savanti settlement is Binary Basin, Zane said. It is a habitat station much like this one, with one key difference. Binary Basin is currently orbiting the planet Acrux 2, which is the site of a major terraforming project. Zane's secretary leaned forward to finish the explanation. Right now, work crews are installing a magnetic field amplifier on the planet. When finished, the planet's naturally occurring magnetic field will be able to protect us from the cosmic storm. So you can ride out the disaster there, Ino said. I understand that. I can only assume you've chosen to prioritize the evacuation, so any repairs to my ship will have to wait. Zane touched her nose and gave Ino a knowing look. Now, I didn't say that, the Harbor Master replied. We will not leave our new allies out in the void like you imply. You see, I have a number of personal contacts in the Vengralian Trium, contacts who would be willing to aid you for a price. That's what I was afraid of, Ino muttered. Then she turned her attention to the Caravaneers. Because we are out of contact with Coalition Stratcom, I am assuming responsibility for diplomatic contacts. You should know that during these negotiations, I am speaking with, the voice of President Andrew Horner. Ino cursed herself for tripping over that last sentence. Truthfully, the words were not her own. She was coached to say this by Sota shortly before the meeting began. Ino's second-in-command told her to exert as much authority as possible to make herself look stronger before negotiations began. Aranoe clicked her fingers, and one of the underlings produced a tablet computer. You must understand, Esperanta, my people spend their whole lives in space. Traveling in voidcraft is just as natural to us as it is for you to cover your body in those strange textiles. We scanned your vessel as soon as it came into range and developed a plan to repair all of your systems. How kind of you, Ino said. I know that your people have a long and storied history of trade. I'm sure we can agree on a fair payment for your services. Ino felt Elodie tense up behind her. This was the part both women were dreading. Aranoe tapped her tablet computer. Our scans show that you have 2,847 humans, 357 Savanti, 90 military androids, 2 civil androids, 1 astrophyton, and a partridge aboard your vessel, Aranoe said. Something rather curious happened as soon as Aranoe stopped speaking. Elodie said something in a very angry tone of voice. However, she was not speaking English. Aranoe and the Caravaneers looked at her with a perplexed expression. Harbor Master Zane narrowed her eyes. I apologize, Esperanta. I think my translator implant just glitched, Zane said. What did your bodyguard just call me? It took every ounce of Ino's willpower to stop herself from smiling. She made a mental note to ask Elodie exactly when she had found the time to learn the Esperanto language. Elodie's pronunciation was terrible, but Ino understood what her friend was trying to say. Aranoe had told a lie. Keeping her face straight, Ino said, Don't worry about it. She was talking to me, not to you. Something to do with the ship. To reinforce Ino's story, Elodie put one hand to her own waist and thumbed the talk button on her two-way radio. The device made a squawking sound. Aranoe shrugged off the interruption and continued. My people will repair the Marathon, Aranoe said. In return, we ask for 50 human males, 100 human females, 30 Savanti males, and 60 Savanti females. I think this would be a very fair trade. Ino's breath caught in her throat. Suddenly, she felt just as tense as Elodie. She had been warned a demand like this might happen, but it still stung to hear it. No, Ino said bluntly, her breath coming in angry heaves. Absolutely not. My people are not commodities to be bartered. Aranoe did not flinch. I think you will find that during a galaxy-spanning catastrophe, anything and anyone can be bought and sold, the Caravaneer said. It is during times like this that forward-thinking people re-evaluate what does and does not have value. Ino was about to retort when the office suddenly began to shake and the lights flickered. What the hell? Ino gasped. Harbor Master Zane pushed a button on her desk. System report, she demanded. An automated computer voice replied, Explosion at Docking Bay 11. Ino and Elodie followed Harbor Master Zane and her security team to the scene of the explosion. Along the way, a group of UN Space Marines, dispatched from Marathon, joined the group. Takahito Savea, one of the Marines from Elodie's squad, caught up with Ino. Captain, preliminary investigation shows the explosion was deliberate. A Caravaneer vessel detonated from the inside after loading some cargo. There's a saboteur aboard the station. Yeah, and I think I know who it might be, Ino said. Look there. Ino, Elodie, Savea, Aranoe, and Zane arrived in the damaged docking bay. A frigate-sized Caravaneer ship lay on one side, its hull split open like a melon. While firefighters worked to contain the blaze, Ino pointed to a far wall, where the image of a four-pointed compass had been painted on the smooth surface, just high enough to be seen from any angle. Sota was on the Marathon's bridge when the explosion initially occurred. Reflexively, he ordered the ship to general quarters. This meant that all of the airlocks were sealed, closing Marathon off from the rest of the station. It also meant that anyone outside of the ship would be trapped until he gave the order to stand down. All compartments report ready for battle, sir, said Chief Engineer Kazuki. How many of our people were locked out? Sota asked. Looks like about 40, sir, Kazuki replied, including Captain Esperanta. Sota took a deep breath. You did the right thing, sir, Kazuki added. Esperanta will understand. Before Sota could reply, there was a loud chime from the comms station. Lieutenant Undungane grabbed her headset and tuned in. It's a message from Captain Esperanta, she said. Yes, yes. Tell the Marines to let her back on board at once, Sota grumbled. No, sir, it's not that, said Undungane. She's ordering you to have Tactical Officer Valent detained by security and confined to quarters. Sota and Kazuki looked at one another, bewildered. Prisbin? They said together. Ino's friend? Prisbin had been fearing this day for almost 3 years. For the second time in his life, a group of Space Marines had detained him. 2 members of Elodie's squad handcuffed Prisbin and force-marched him back to his quarters. "What's going on? Why am I under arrest?" Prisbin asked. Hermione Durand glared at him. Her face was full of disgust. "Commander Beninato didn't say, but I bet we can guess," Hermione said, her voice full of venom. "We all know about the Galax incident," Ashok Raval chimed in. "You raped Esperanta and got away with it." Looks like she finally found the courage to speak up. "No!" Prisbin gasped, terror cascading through his body. "No! Esperanta and I talked about it afterward. She had a nightmare. She spoke in my defense." "How many times have we heard that one after arresting someone at the All Ranks Club?" Hermione said to Ashok. "Too many, if you ask me," Ashok said. "But what can we do? If we space the ship's grog, there'd be a mutiny." Ignoring Prisbin's pleas, the 2 Marines threw the young officer into his quarters and sealed the door. Prisbin was alone in his room for several hours, his mind racing from one nightmare scenario to another. Then the door opened again. "Ino!" Prisbin gasped. Ino and Sota came into his room. Elodie, who shut the door behind her, closely followed them. Elodie was looking at Prisbin with barely disguised hatred, while Sota and Ino both looked stern. "Uncuff him," Ino said. "We need to talk." Elodie glowered at Prisbin before removing his handcuffs. "You touch her, and I'll castrate you with a bullet," Ino whispered in Prisbin's ear. "Back off!" Ino snapped at Elodie. The Marine withdrew, keeping one hand on her pistol holster. Ino folded her arms and spoke to Prisbin in a voice that carried none of their old friendship. "The Order of the Pathfinders blew up a Caravaneer ship today. Did you have something to do with that?" she asked. Sota continued to glare. Ino shook her head, visibly confused. Prisbin tried to mirror Elodie's expression. "The Order of the Pathfinders?" Prisbin repeated. "You mean that humanitarian organization?" Ino took a deep breath. "Beninato, I don't have time for this bullshit," Ino said. "Tell him to skip the pleasantries." "We know you're a Pathfinder," Sota said. "The captain says she knew about the secret society for years, and that she's had you pegged as a member ever since Galax. Coalition Intel has all sorts of details about the Order taking anti-slavery politics in a violent direction. You people are one step shy of being terrorists. Now drop the act and spit it out. Did you blow up that Caravaneer ship in Bay 11? Feeling cornered, Prisbin decided to try the truth. He would count on his friendship with Ino. It was his only card left to play. Slowly, he shook his head. "Not me. Not anyone aboard the Marathon. Esperanta, you tried to join the Order years ago. You know how secret societies work. One branch doesn't know what the other is doing. There's a Pathfinder cell operating on the Habitat Station. They've probably been here for years." Sota closed in and put his hand on Prisbin's shoulder. "What the fuck do you mean by that?" Sota asked. "It was all part of a bigger plan," Prisbin said. "Surely you must have heard about it. The slaves escaping from Destican space." Ino swore. "Fuck! So the Desticans were right. There really were humans helping their slaves escape." "A small army of humans," Prisbin said. "The Coalition was never going to help, not when they're 2 steps away from an AI uprising. By the time Earth figures out what to do with the synths, millions of sentient people would have died in captivity. We had to act." "We always had our suspicions," Sota said. "At least now we've got confirmation." Prisbin turned to look at Ino. "And by the way, the reason no one ever looked at your application is because we had a pause in recruiting during the last 12 months before Operation Underground Railroad kicked off. Nobody got in." When Ino gave the order for Prisbin to be released, all of the Space Marines looked at her as though she had lost her mind. Hermione Durand gently touched Ino's arm. "Please, ma'am, don't do this." "I need my chief tactical officer," Ino replied, pulling her arm away. "And I'm convinced he had nothing to do with the bombing at the spaceport." Hermione and Ashok looked dumbfounded as Ino walked away. When she returned to the bridge, Communications Officer Indungane called Ino to her station. "The Caravaneers have called us with a new offer." "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," Ino snapped. "Seriously?" "Yes, ma'am," said Indungane. "If we give them an armed escort to Binary Basin, they'll repair our systems along the way." "An armed escort," Ino repeated. "They couldn't have gotten that badly spooked by a single bomb. What's going on?" "I might know the answer to that," a voice spoke from behind her. Ryland Quinn had returned to the bridge. "I've been speaking to Administrator Loris," Ryland said. "My old friend says he struck a deal with the Caravaneers. Safe passage to everyone on the station to Binary Basin. In return, the Caravaneers get to take 50,000 people of their choice. And they need an armed escort because of this." Ryland pointed to the nearby hologram table, where a 3-dimensional map of the system was hovering in midair. Ino looked and saw the planets and stars that made up the Tedis system. She could also see little green and blue markers that gave away the location of Quantum Crossing habitat. Then, Ino looked where Ryland was pointing. She gasped. A flotilla of enemy warships had hyperspaced into the system. 29 vessels, armed to the teeth, were bearing down on Quantum Crossing. "Marauders," Ryland said. "My people know them well. My first space battle, at the very beginning of my career, was a raid against these degenerates." "Who are they?" asked Ino. "The Lox Ungrak van Braves," Ryland said. And then there was a loud screeching noise as the comm station malfunctioned. "They're all over," Indungane cried out. "The Marauders are broadcasting on every frequency. They just keep cycling to a new wavelength when I block them." "Fine. Let's hear what they've got to say," Ino groaned. "No!" Ryland barked. "That's a bad idea." But it was too late. Indungane had flipped the switch. The connection was made, and the voice of a Marauder captain was broadcast into the bridge. "The only thing worse than a Dwamak is a Dwakam. No, do not ask what it is.
Creeping in my sword's getting out of control. I gotta find my escape, get out of this black hole. Cause justice in the world is hard to find. Time has come, gotta make up my mind. No matter how deep or remote I hide, all my thoughts seem caught up inside. Creeps from the deep, gonna be freaking up your mind.